Good morning, everyone. As you are joining the room, and welcome. My name is Chris Surface. I'll be your MC this morning, and we'll be moderating the chat. And we encourage everyone to say hello and let us know if you have any questions throughout the program. Stand by, though. We're just letting everybody in, and we've got a few more coming with us. So just enjoy the time for a few moments as the rest of us start to fill the room. And for those of you just joining us as well, once again, I will say good morning. We are just letting a few more people into the room. So we're going to hold for a few moments as they join us. Once again, my name is Chris Surface, and I'm going to be your MC for this morning's Together for Alice. I'm very excited to be here again. I think this is my third year, Donna, if I remember correctly, in being here with y'all.
Yes, this is the third.
It's great seeing so many faces come into the room. Welcome and good morning, everybody. It looks like we're going to be almost ready to start in just a moment as a few more people join us in the room. And I think we're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. Again, welcome. My name is Chris Surface. I'm going to be your MC this morning. We will be moderating the chat. So if you have any questions or want to say hello throughout the program, please feel free to drop that into the chat. And we want to welcome everybody and thank you for joining us today for the Together for Alice Town Hall. Alice in the Cross Currents, and a look at the impact of COVID and the financial hardship that continue to face Alice families. Now, first for today, I would like to introduce Nath Laver. Nath is the Secretary-Treasurer for the Pierce County Labor Council and Vice Chair of the Board of Directors for the United Way of Pierce County.
Good morning, and thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for Together for Alice. First, please join me as we honor and acknowledge that the land many of us are streaming in from today has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst many Indigenous peoples, specifically the Puyallup tribe. We pay our respects to elders both past and present. United Way honors and respects the diverse Indigenous peoples connected to this territory on which many of us gather. Next, I would also like to recognize our board of directors, several of whom are with us here today. And of course, the hardworking staff at the United Way. They've been working diligently to put this event together today, and I want to thank them for all their efforts. For the past 103 years, United Way of Pierce County has been bringing the community together to address the most pressing needs in Pierce County. We have a bold goal of lifting 15,000 households out of poverty by 2028. And to date, together with many community partners, 9,800 families have moved from a place of crisis towards a place of self-sufficiency. And this morning, we'll dive into the ALICE data. ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And this will include a look at the ongoing impact of the pandemic and the hardships that still persist both nationally and in Pierce County. And finally, we'll share what United Way is doing to ensure that Alice has a bright future because of the work we're doing together in Pierce County. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Nate. Just so you all have a copy of the agenda of how our program is going today, we want to let you know the progress of that. So take a moment to read that. And then now It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Stephanie Hoops, who's the National Director for ALICE at United Way of Northern New Jersey, who will provide a brief high-level overview of some of the national data and trends in the latest ALICE report. Dr. Hoops, it's all over to you.
Chris, thanks so much. And I appreciate, Donna, you inviting me. As you know, United for Alice is a national research organization, and we work with partners across the country. And one of our standout partners is right here, United Way of Pierce County. So thank you for the work that you're doing and for including me in this great town hall discussion, bringing Alice close to home. So we've been at this studying ALICE trends since 2007, and our first report was way back in 2009. We have data for the whole country, and together we're really raising the profile of ALICE families and unreported dimension of our communities that we all know are so important. So let's dig in for a minute. Who is ALICE? You heard the acronym. Next slide, Chris. The acronym is Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. We have a technical definition: households that are above the federal poverty level, but not able to afford the basics of the household necessities where they live. But we also all know Alice. We run into Alice 5 times before we even get to work. The person at the coffee bar, at childcare, at the bank, at the gas station, the security guard in the parking lot. So many jobs that we need to keep our economy running. We got to know them a little bit better during the pandemic, as they enabled many of us to, be safe, quarantine, and now we see many of those workers continuing to struggle. So let's dig in and look at the data on a national level, and then we're going to hear a little bit later on the details in your county and even below that. So what we see nationally is, according to our primary measure of financial hardship, the federal poverty level, that 13% of households are struggling. But when you look at what it actually costs to live and work in the current economy, another 29% of households are struggling. So instead of 13% of households, it's really 42% of households across the US are struggling. And it's a different magnitude in understanding, but it's a different magnitude in terms of solutions. And so it's so important that our work is recognizing what until now has been an invisible group, and yet, as we've just been talking about, essential to running our economy. And the crux of this stems from what it actually costs to live on the one hand. And so in this figure, we're looking at the household survival budget in the blue column. So spelling out housing, childcare, food, transportation, healthcare, small line for technology, and Alice pays taxes. And then we compare that with wages. So the yellow columns are wages full-time year-round for 2 of the most common occupations in the country, cashier and retail sales. And so the 2 columns that we have are, one is 2021 and the other is 2022. And in our latest report, we were quite keen to see what was the impact of the pandemic phasing out, but also all the economic supports that were put into place during the pandemic. And so what we see from 2021 to 2022 is that the costs of those household basics increased. So the blue column got a little bit bigger, but we're also seeing that the yellow columns, that wages also increase. So that is a huge win for Alice, and it's something that we haven't seen much in the previous decade. So low wage jobs are actually experiencing increases in the last year or two. But those wages aren't enough to get up to that survival budget. And so we see a big gap. In 2021, part of that gap was filled with pandemic supports, things like the expanded child tax credit, the child dependent care tax credit, and the economic impact payments. And then we switched to 2022, the economic impact payments went away, and the tax credits reverted to their earlier lower amounts. And so even with those wage increases, Alice households were further behind. And so this is an example of a family of 4 with children. Of course, it's slightly different for every variation of a household, but I think the trend and the overall point is valid across all households, that even though wages are increasing, people are thinking, gosh, I should be getting ahead, and yet costs are increasing and supports have gone away. So it's this struggle, 1 step forward, 2 step forwards, but a step back as well. So that frustration that we hear in the community is coming from this mismatch between costs and wages. On the far right is the federal poverty level, that gray bar. So just to show how low that is and how out of touch with what's actually happening with wages and costs. We've been tracking Alice for a long time, and I think that this overall trend is important. We see across the country that the number of households in poverty has been actually pretty flat, while the number of Alice households has ticked up year after year through good times, bad times, hard times, pandemics, and the recovery. So those trend lines are pretty important. And so when people are thinking, oh, financial hardship is stable, it's not that bad, they're missing a really big part of the picture. And we see that Alice trend line ticking up. Alice lives across the country. There's variation between our states, with a low of 32% in Alaska and a high of 52% in Mississippi. Washington State is on the lower end and actually ranks 3rd across the country in the lowest rate of financial hardship, with 34% below the Alice threshold. And in our reports and on our website, unitedforalice.org, we dig into lots of details. So I hope you'll spend some time there checking out all the Alice data for Washington State and your local community. And one of the areas that we know is very important are the different demographics. So we dig into age, race, household type, urban, rural, and there's big variation across these groups, as you would expect, from a long history of systemic racism, ageism, gender discrimination, and geographic barriers. I'm going to let Donna dig into that a little bit more for Washington State and Pierce County. But one group I wanted to highlight are seniors. With the aging of the baby boomer generation, we're seeing a huge increase in the number of senior households overall, and the percent that are below the Alice threshold has reached 51% across the country. So 13% in poverty, 39% are Alice. And one of the things that stands out about households that are 65 years and older is this connect with Social Security. And because Social Security is pegged to the federal poverty rate, it's been a very effective program to get older Americans above poverty rate. But it is not enough to get seniors to financial stability. And so in the graph that you're seeing, the yellow bar is Social Security. It's above the gray of the federal poverty level, but it's not reaching the blue bar that represents the survival budget. So we have a big crisis that's here, and it's growing. So want to make sure that that is on your radar. And this is a group that's important in our families, in our communities, and at the voting box. And just lastly, to emphasize that Alice works in jobs that we're all very familiar with. Again, on our website, you can dig into these occupations in your state. But just highlighting the top 20 occupations across the country, 32% of those workers were below the Alice threshold. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hoops, for that presentation on the national statistics of Alice. And now it's my pleasure to welcome Donna Ponapinto, the president and CEO of United Way of Pierce County. Donna.
Well, thank you, Chris. And first of all, it is wonderful to have so many of you joining us this morning. We had over 190 people register, and 105 are on Zoom with us this morning. So it's really wonderful to be able to share this information with all of you. A little bit later, I'm going to be going through the actual interactive website. But I'm going to highlight some of the numbers specific to Pierce County. You know, Dr. Hoops shared with you the national trends, and we know that locally we felt the same economic forces, that everyone across the country is facing. So, this slide right here shows Alice across the state and across the county, Pierce County. And you'll see that between poverty and Alice households, it's 34%. In the 2021 data that we have, it was 31. So the number of Alice households is increasing. Poverty is staying flat. At least it has stayed flat over the last couple of years. And then in Tacoma, you've got 40% of the households that are at poverty or at Alice level. And all of the information by the different cities within Pierce County is also on our website, and I'll be touching upon that in just a little bit as well. So you can go to the next. So, again, Alice remains in the cross currents. I mean, Alice families are still struggling from the pandemic. They've got the cost of basics. Again, as Dr. Hoops mentioned, the household survival budget for a family of 4 with 2 children in childcare, based on the 2022 census information for Pierce County, is $98,000 a year. In 2021, it was $84,000 a year. So it's getting more expensive to live. It's getting more expensive to live everywhere. And in particular, it's getting more expensive to live here in Pierce County. Housing costs, we know that housing is one of the largest expenses next to childcare, and those continue to rise. And food assistance, we know that food insecurity is definitely something that most experiencing. You can go to the next slide. So, the hardship persists. In 2021, we had 107,000 households that were Alice. In 2022, 117,000 households or Alice. So it, again, continues to persist with, statewide, the numbers are also high. Statewide, it is 32% of the households statewide are Alice. And some of the demographics of the households here in Pierce County, for Native American, it's 44%. That's actually down from the last census data. It was closer to 50%. Black African American households is staying relatively flat at it's staying at the 48%, and that's 48% of the African American households. Hispanic, Latino, Latinx households, 39% of the Hispanic households are Alice, and that's actually increased just slightly from the year before. And the lowest you can see, white households at 30%, multiracial households at 34%, and Asian households at 37%. And then here's just another look in terms of just groups. Again, highest hardship, you've got Black African American households, under the age of 25 and single female head of household with children. But what we're also seeing is that single male headed households are also increasing as well. So we're, one of the programs that we have, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is our guaranteed income, where not only single female head of households are part of that mix, but also single male head of households. And then you can go back to that slide for just a second. Lois, the Caucasian white, the ages 45 to 64, and then the married with children. So again, this perfect storm keeps Alice from stability. You've got, for instance, a family of 4 in 2022, and Dr. Hoops mentioned this. You had the expansion of the benefits and then the expiration of those child care tax credits. And so a family of 4, they saw the loss up to $15,000 in tax credit and supports in 2021. So imagine you're an Alice family, you have this extra income to help you survive, and then that's cut off. And so Alice was already struggling before the pandemic, and even more so once those benefits went away. The other thing that I want to mention about the household expenses is that while the $98,000 for a family of 4 is survival, the stability budget is at right now $168,000 for a family of 4, just to move to being stable, to being beyond self-sufficiency. That 98,000 doesn't include savings, it doesn't include any extras, but the bare minimum. Okay, you can go to the next slide. And this, again, is just an example of how it's changed over time in terms of the number of households from starting back to 2010 to 2022. And I'll be able to show you the interactive slide when we get to that part of the agenda. Okay, and then the spotlight on Alice with children. 33% families with children in Pierce County, they struggle every single day to get by. And childcare is right now becoming, one of the largest expenses in households in Pierce County. Okay, and then Stephanie talked about older Americans, 65 and plus, growing, the fastest growing age group in Washington, up 52% between 2010 and 2022, 70% surge in 65 plus households here in Pierce County. So it's a population that, our population is getting older, and we need to pay attention, and we need to make sure that we're providing supports, especially to women over 65. That is also one of the higher growing populations of Alice households in the county. So I think that's my last slide. Chris, is it? Okay, yes. And so now it is my pleasure to introduce Brian Flint, who's the Executive Director of Sound Outreach. And Sound Outreach is a part of our Center for Strong Family Network, and they're really on the front lines every day to improve lives of Alice families. And so, as we look at all the hardships that Alice families continue to face, there are really some stories of hope and resilience. So I'm going to kick it over to Brian.
Great. Thank you, Donna, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. Sound Outreach, we have a big vision that all people possess the ability, confidence, knowledge to build financial security, create prosperity, and grow generational wealth. And our mission is to empower Pierce County residents to achieve economic mobility through an integrated coaching and counseling model so that they can secure personal financial health. And we, in addition to the Center for Strong Families, which I'll touch on, we also run a program called Sheba, which is a cadre of volunteers who help older adults navigate that transition with accurate, unbiased information about Medicaid and Medicare. So as Donna mentioned, we are part of the Center for Strong Families movement, which is a key strategy to helping to move 15,000 families out of poverty by 2028. And we operate 3 of the 7 Centers for Strong Families with Sound Outreach. That would be the Hilltop location. We collaborate with the Bethel School District, and we have our 3rd location at the Sumner Bonnie Lake Family Resource Center with the school district there. But we partner with the other entities that have Centers for Strong Families, Clover Park Technical College, Goodwill, Tacoma Community House, and Tacoma Housing Authority. And together we have created a learning community where we're constantly learning how best to coach families into the middle class. And I think we need to take a moment to really give a shout out to Donna. Donna joined our community 10 years ago. Donna, can you believe it's been 10 years? She joined us 10 years, and she brought the concept of Alice with her from United Way, which really broke down that barrier that you're either poor or you're in the middle class, and created a new dialogue and new language for us to talk about those families that are earning wages but are struggling and aren't able to make it get through. And it's not because of any fault of them are. It's the economic system we have and the inherent racism and discrimination that's inherent in that system. So our model is a coaching model where we have an employment coach and a financial coach who work as a team with households to help them achieve their dreams. We pull credit, we do a family budget, we work with them to say, what's your career goals? What do you need to earn per hour to be able to have a stable lifestyle and achieve those dreams? And how can we get you there? Do you need to go back to school? Let's practice interview skills. Let's get online and look for job openings that you could apply for. And so with that coaching model, we often find that it's just one thing that we can help families with that help them spiral up into prosperity. And it's just, we have dozens of stories of how fixing a credit issue, negotiating with a landlord, helping them figure out where their spending's going to, can really help them start to get ahead. But we also, post-pandemic especially, we're finding that if you looked at that graph, you could see how close Alice families are to that poverty line. And it just takes one thing. And 50% of our clients are in acute financial crisis when they come to us. And so they really are struggling. They're not worried about making budget at the end of the month. They're worried about making budget at the beginning of the month and where they're going to be at the end of the month. So the impact of the pandemic, interest rates, housing costs, the lack of a functioning childcare system has had a really huge impact. And the last word I'll leave you with is, when the pandemic hit and we sent everybody home, as a society, we made policy decisions and financial decisions to support those who were hurting. But post-pandemic, when we have 40% of our population that's hurting, are we going to recommit to those policies so that we can support those families? The child tax credit reduced poverty by 50% in one foul swoop. Can we commit to that work going forward so that we can give Alice families a leg up? So thanks for the time today, and I'll turn it back over to you, Donna.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. And what we're going to do now is we're going to hear a story of hope. This is Rachel. She is a client at a Center for Strong Family site, and she is going to share her story. sound is not working.
Apologies, we will try that again. Just one moment.
Living in survival mode, raising my son by myself and drowning in debt. I was unwilling to face it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to look at it. I really had no financial literacy. I didn't have a savings account or anything like that. And now I'm getting all of this education. I never really ever saw money exchange hands in the adults in my life as a child. It was always other people giving to us and we were the recipients. We didn't have financial security growing up. We absolutely were on every resource Pierce County could offer. So going into adulthood, you know, making my own money, I didn't spend it wisely because I never saw anybody spend it responsibly as a child. One of the things that I got myself into as a young adult was payday loans. You get extra money that one time because then you have to pay back. That was the cycle I lived in as a young adult, was payday loans until I discovered credit cards. I did that song and dance for a very long time up until when I met my coach and really had to dive deep into what it was like to be a fiscally responsible adult. And it's been a hard year to manage shopping and saving. Having the savings feels like security, and it feels like I am successful at being an adult. It makes me feel like I'm actually making progress as well as modeling for my son. And that's something I would have never been able to do in my earlier years or when my son was little. It's nothing I ever saw my mom do, because whenever there was an emergency, it was figuring out who else could pay for it. And financial coaching really helped me break out of that cycle and out of that mindset, because, you know, when you're down, it's hard to get back up. And financial coaching was that help up, that hand up. I think everybody needs that opportunity to have that hand up in adulthood, because it doesn't matter what walk of life you come from. Financial literacy is so important in making it into the next step and making sure that your life is well-rounded. Financial security is one of those things that can either make a successful person or make a person who has the ability to be successful feel really unsuccessful. And financial coaching makes me feel like a successful person because of the skills that I've learned and walked away with. I'm now able to model that for my son, and that's priceless.
And thanks to Rachel for helping us put together that video. And so now we're going to hear another of hope. I'd like to introduce Lakeisha Couch, who is one of the recipients of our guaranteed income work in partnership with the city of Tacoma, which this was during 2022 that we were able to provide 110 single head of households with $500 a month for 13 months. Lakeisha was a part of that particular cohort. We have also been fortunate to be able to do this a second time through a $1.9 million proviso in the state budget, working with the state and the DSHS, along with the city of Tacoma and the county. And 175 recipients will receive $500 a month for 12 months. And this is all about really building and showing the efficacy of, guaranteed income efforts, not only within the state, but across the country, and how unconditional cash support to working families, hardworking families, really does make a difference. And so now I will turn it over to Lakeisha.
Good morning to you all, and thank you so much for having me today. Just to start off, being, having a family, an Alice family, growing up, with a 2-parent household, 5 of us total, 3 kids, seeing my parents struggling. I mean, I barely seen my dad. He worked 2 jobs to try to provide for, the 3 of us and give us, as much as we could, growing up. Once I became, a mom, and I went back to school just a year and a half before COVID started. I knew nothing really about savings. I never really had any savings, never seen my parents put money into savings. So it was always a paycheck to paycheck type deal. Once I had my son, again, I was able to go back to school right before the pandemic. And unfortunately, during that time, I wasn't even able to walk. Once March 2020 came, everything had shut down. So not only was I pretty much unemployed, living, with my mom, needing as much, help from the community and my mom just to get by, income wise, and even with like childcare. I found out about this group program actually through the Tacoma News Tribune. Before this GRIT program, I knew nothing about guaranteed income. I didn't know it was a thing. And so when I applied, I was a little skeptical about it because, again, I knew nothing about guaranteed income. I'm like, is this a scam? This is $500 guaranteed income a month. Like, what is the catch-22? Is this going to mess up my, food benefits? These were all questions going through my mind that I wasn't sure of, but I was sure that I definitely needed the assistance. So again, I applied. I was so thankful and grateful to be able to receive this money every month, and it came on time every month. I will say, I was able to get myself out of a little bit of debt that I was in during that time. Before that, being able to take my son on outings, trips, engaging in sports with him, even just kind of to take that time alone with him was very hard. During this time also with, receiving this money monthly, I was able to help my mom out a little bit, help her, get out of a little bit of debt. So I think that, I personally didn't know of a lot of the resources that we actually have in the community. I definitely will say that this GRIT program, and now being a part of the research team of it all during this second go round, it just feels amazing to be able to give my story and to tell my story. A lot of the times, people are so shy about expressing, these types of things. And I know for myself, just even asking for help was always hard, put pride aside. I feel like there's so many people out there like me that need help. They don't have the resources for this. And yeah, I'm very thankful for it. Right now, I am actually a medical assistant, so I went to school for that. And again, I wasn't able to walk, but that's okay. So turn it all around now. I am working in a pediatrics office. My son is going to be the Big Ten. He is now in football. So we have started doing that. I am not struggling as much as I was then. There's still a little bit of a struggle, but at the same time, again, I'm thankful to have gone through what I've gone through, the GRIT program being there, being able to give back now, and just getting my story out there. And I just hope that my story can touch someone else and give back to someone else. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, Lakeisha, for taking time from your day to share with us. We do appreciate it. And thank you for being out there, especially in pediatric medicine. That's so wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And Brian, thank you for sharing sound outreach and for being a part of this today as well. Now, I'd like to turn it back over to Donna to tell us a little bit more about the website and data points of Together for Alice.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm typically I have Jim Cooper, who is the president and CEO of the United Way Pacific Northwest, do this portion. So bear with me, and I will ask, don't everyone jump on this site because it will slow things down. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I need to, let's see. Chris, you need to stop. Let's see. This
You
will
should be able
stop.
to override this.
Okay, okay, got it. All right. Okay, can everyone see this? All
Yes,
right.
I am.
So this is the county reports. This is for the state of Washington, and I believe the link for from our website was put into the chat. So I'm going to run through a couple of things, but it's really, when you do get a chance, I encourage you to go through this. There was a couple of questions about the data. There's an Excel sheet here that you can click you can click on, and gives you all the zip codes. Zip code information. You can export pages. It's got both the 24 report for the state of Washington as well as the 23 report. Also, here's all of the information that you can pull from the Alice reports, household budgets, demographics, labor force. The well-being right now is just regards to internet usage, but we're looking at what are some other things that we would like to see for our county. Extra costs involved, but we think it's important. And so I'm going to take you to the Pierce County and go through, highlight some of the specifics there. Okay, so Pierce County, and you can see you can do demographics, budget, labor force pages as well. What I like about this is that, you know, it's interactive, and all of the information is here. If you want to do it by percentage of households as well, the financial hardship over time. And we know that it's not equally distributed. So here it is, talked about this earlier, by race, gives you all of the total households for the county, and then by race. And again, this is all Pierce County, but if you want to know another county within the state, you can always go to that particular state. Types of household, the age of that household is under age 25, 60% are below that Alice threshold. And then the costs, something that I shared earlier. You can see here the costs. And this is just the survival budget. This is just survival budget. So for 2 adults and 2 children in childcare, you'll see it's $98,000 a year. The labor landscaped. And then here is you can look at by subdivision. You can look at it in several ways. By subdivision, by census, and by zip codes. And someone was asking about that earlier. I believe there was a question in the chat about the zip codes. And I'm going to take you to another site. Go to the, I don't know, can you tell me if you can see, if this switches, can anyone see household budgets? Are you seeing that on your screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so the household budget, 2022. There's also the Alice Essentials Index, and we haven't spent a lot of time talking about that, but it basically talks about what are those things that, you know, Alice families need, those basics. So cost of living by geography in the state of Washington. You can also this is in household survival budget by, this is what's really cool. This calculator right here that's on the household, you can select, it's just by state. Oh, hold on, state, and then you can do by county. And I'm going to try to, I want to make sure I keep track of time. Am I doing okay on time? So if you have Pierce County, Washington, and you've got, say, 4 people in the household, 2 are adults, and, maybe 2 are preschool, it will calculate what their survival budget should be. So, I mean, look at this. Annual, 178,000. I think I did that right. Yes. So if you have 2 infants, if you change that to, why don't we, to 2 preschoolers, you're still talking a significant amount that needs to come into the household. Hourly wage, $86 an hour. So think about that, and think about what Stephanie was talking about earlier in terms of, the jobs availability, and one of the things that we've seen in Pierce County as well. Yes, wages have increased, but they haven't increased enough. Even with a state, in a state where the minimum wage is increased, I believe it's now $17 an hour. Even if you had 2 adults in the household working, that's still not enough for an Alice household. So Alice families are still working multiple jobs. Let's see, what else can I show you? I can show demographics. Can everybody see that? If we talked a little bit about the demographics. Oh, I know what I'm going to I want to show. Can I get this? Again, I'm not Jim Cooper. There's the legislative, and I'm not sure how I get to the legislative.
If you go to the tool tab at the top, go to the research center and drop down.
Okay. Oh, okay. Legislative. So, when we talk about advocacy, Brian touched on this. One of the things that we're able to do is we're able to pull information by districts. So if we go to Washington and we go, let's see, what's a district? Is it 26? 26 is a Pierce County, yeah. So we can say, all right, in this legislative district, how many individuals in that particular individual's district are Allison and in poverty? So this can really be a very powerful tool for individuals to use. So I am going to stop sharing that. And I don't know if there were any questions in the chat. There's also a wage tool as well that you can use. If you go onto our website, if you go onto our website, and if you go onto our website, which again, the link is in the chat, you can find towards the bottom of the page links to everything that I just talked about. Okay. All right. So then the other thing that I'm going to do before we turn it over to questions that are in the chat, or if you have a chat, if you have a question, I think Chris will have to unmute you. So, just Chris, why don't you go to the next slide? So all of that said, you've heard a lot of information today. You know, our United Way is really focusing on Alice in several ways. You know, we support community partners like Sound Outreach and others, and financial stability, basic needs. To our 211 call center, you know, connects about 80,000 individuals to supports throughout the year, including helping them to navigate services. And a lot of those are Alice families, navigating them to get access to housing, to behavioral health supports, to workforce development supports, and getting people connected with our partners like Workforce Central and our partners that are out in the community providing behavioral health types of services. You heard about GRIT, our Growing Resilience in Tacoma, our guaranteed income work, and then our Centers for Strong Families, which we have 7 right now, and we will be launching an 8th in the Franklin Pierce School District as our next partner. So what can you do? Use your voice to advocate and to change the narrative around Alice and poverty. You know, looking at eliminating racial wealth gaps. You know, while Alice in the county is 34%, which has gone up, when you start to peel back the data, you know, we still have a disproportionate number of individuals of color that are Alice households. Share resources to help families build their assets, such as, you know, the working family tax credit, the earned income tax credit, and the financial coaching resources. And just join us as we work with Alice to achieve our bold goal of lifting 15,000 households out of poverty. And so if you go to the next slide, again, there's the website information. And I really would encourage you to take a look at the data and use the data to create change. Use the data to look at how you can better serve, for those of you that are nonprofits, how you can better serve your clients by understanding what are the barriers that Alice families face, and also just build awareness. And then lastly, there's a quote here from someone who is Alice. I want to make a better life for myself, but of course I have to start with stability. I want stability more than anything. And another thing that we hear Alice families say a lot, they just want room to breathe. And so United Way will continue to make sure that, you know, more Alice families are not just self-sufficient, but they're thriving. So with that, I'm going to open it up to some questions before we close it out.
And if you have a question, everybody, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. That's going to alert us and let us know, and we will unmute you so you can ask your question of any of our wonderful United Way staff who are here today. We do have a question coming through in the chat from Heather. It looks like most Alice data includes housing rent costs. How does home ownership fit into the equation, particularly for some of our senior population who may fully own their home?
You know, that's a good question. You know, I don't know the answer to that. Stephanie, do you have some insight?
I'm sorry, I was answering Ron's question in the
Okay.
chat. Can you repeat the question?
Sure, I'll repeat it for you. It looks like most Alice data includes housing rent costs. How does home ownership fit into the equation, particularly for some of our senior population who may fully own their home?
Yeah, that's a great question. So about 40% of Alice households are homeowners. And it really can be a problem, especially as people age, you know, that the tax burden on that, you know, increases when your income is been pretty well set. So we do see a lot of programs that help seniors to try and stay in their homes, but often it's not enough. And so I glad someone is, you know, we often think of Alice as renters, but there is a significant portion that are struggling with those homeownership costs.
So there's another question. How can nonprofit social service agencies use ALICE data to make programmatic decisions? You know, I think I briefly touched on this. Is, you know, if you understand what your, you know, the zip codes that you serve and what you know, what is the ALICE population? You know, are they mostly single head of households? You know, are they you know, what is, you know, the income level? I mean, these are things that you will help you decide, you know, how to best serve that population. You know, part of it is too really digging into the data. You know, as Stephanie mentioned, 40% of the ALICE households are homeowners. So, you know, when we look at the senior population, if they already own their home and they're on a fixed income, for instance, you know, it's different than if they are renting their home and on a fixed income, and maybe they've already paid for their home. So I think when it comes to social service agencies, how can you use the data to actually help you raise resources for your organization as well? You know, how can you use the data to advocate on behalf of your clients? So I don't know.
Yeah, just a couple things to add to that, Donna. Lots of social service agencies use the survival budget as the eligibility criteria for programs, and that helps meet the need of a huge gap. So many social services in the public sector are tied to the federal poverty level, and there's so many more people in need. So if you can, you know, use that eligibility for the actual cost of where you live, that will open the doors to a much wider group of folks who are struggling. And then the other thing, if I could just put a plug in for the economic viability dashboard. This is a new tool that we've added to the website, and it helps you dig into the needs in your community in terms of housing, work, and community supports. And it kind of puts them side by side, because so often we see where the place where there are good jobs is not the place where there's affordable housing. And the place where there's affordable housing may not have community supports. So we know all of these things matter. So you can identify where those gaps are, and where those gaps are by race and ethnicity is a big part of the dashboard. And then the last tab is the action planner. And so as you know, we kind of wrap up this great town hall, like, I hope you're all motivated to go out and do something. So the action planner can help you, okay, here's the biggest needs in my community, and here are ways that other folks are tackling it in their communities. Which of these might be appropriate where I live? So gives you kind of a toolkit to start making a difference.
Thank you, Stephanie. What other, there was another question. Try asking about lowering the tax for retired folks on a limited budget. Some may be eligible. I'm not sure. Is that a question or is that just a comment, Venus?
My husband works for Pierce County, and there are some, when it comes to folks that own their homes and they're elderly, because they're on a limited income, they may be a program out there for them to pay less per year on their taxes for their home. And I'm not positive how it works, but it might be worth looking into.
Great, thank you for that resource. And so, Chris, you had is this a question? Your organization completes repairs for low-income homeowners at no cost to them in Pierce County, and most of your clients are elderly. So you're interested in how a home ownership counts in ALICE, especially since the AL stands for asset limited. And I think we answered that question earlier.
But just to reinforce, so that survival budget actually measures the cost of renting, because that's the lowest cost, and the survival budget purpose is to do that bare minimum. And there's no savings category to get folks into home ownership. But if they happen to have home ownership, that's the reference point is the comparable rental cost. But I think for your organization is obviously doing something very important and making a difference for a huge number of Alice senior households. And I would encourage you to look at the economic viability dashboard, and that housing tab could help you target homeowners by race and ethnicity, where there are gaps, and help you get your services even more precisely where they're needed. And that's just a awesome thing that you guys are offering.
Great. Any other questions?
I don't see any hands raised in the
Okay.
Zoom spot, so I don't know. I don't think there's any other questions, Donna.
Okay, well, I think there's one more slide after the question slide. I just wanted to thank all of the sponsors. These reports cost and the great work that Dr. Hoops and the team at United for Alice and United Way for Northern New Jersey put a great deal of time and energy into putting these together. We also have a research team. So for those of you that know Dr. Ali Medeiros, he is part of the research team for the Washington Report, as well as others we do through reports through our state association, Washington, Idaho, and Oregon. But here are the state sponsors for the Washington Report. And so very grateful to all the United Ways that put in resources to make this happen, as well as the companies that you see here listed on the screen. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Chris.
All right. Thank you so much, Donna. And thank you, Dr. Hoops, Brian, and Lakeisha for participating today. And Donna for diving into all that data and taking on Jim's job. We appreciate that. And thank all of you for being here today and joining us. We hope that the Alice Report has provided you with a clearer picture of the impact of the pandemic and how it had an impact on the Alice families and the bright spots that are ensuring that Alice has a brighter future. Now, Donna and Dr. Hoops will stay on for some questions if you have any additional ones that you'd like to ask. But as for the general meeting as a whole, thank you so much, and we hope that you all have a wonderful rest of the week and a weekend, and we'll see you next year. Thank you so much.